Hello and welcome back to my channel. It has been a minute. Today we're gonna do part two of this character design series. Been putting off for all sorts of reasons, but I'm happy to be here to talk about this today. Finally, so last time we left off, we looked at drawing these base structure poses. So we did four of them and talked a little bit about how gesture and the pose can inspire different ideas for the design, but it's also just a good framework to work on top of. So since then, I actually took this third design here and swapped the head out with the first one, which I thought had a lot of personality, and did some small fixes to this hand, so that there's less of an overlap, but also just has a bit of a more interesting gesture. So we're going to use this today as our base structure, and we're going to start designing some costumes. So this particular word that I'm using, modeling, up here, just means kind of blocking out the main shapes of the costume. For example, if I wanted to, have like just a big square shape up here, I could draw that, and then maybe I have a round shape here, and then maybe I have long boots or something. But I mean, this is very sort of overly simplified, but we're not going to get into any details and stuff. We're just going to block out the major shapes, and see what kind of layering we can get happening, and what kind of specific designs we can inspire. So on another monitor, I just have Pinterest open. It has a whole bunch of different fashion stuff on it. I've been collecting over time a lot of different references of different cultures that I like. A lot of fashion shows, walkway, or what do you call it? Like catwalk photos of different clothing and different shows and stuff. So I have that on my other monitor, and I really encourage everybody to collect references that are really kind of resonate with you, and not necessarily grabbing other people's references, because it is a whole exercise in itself to do research and gather your reference and learn about all the different things that are involved in character design, whether it be fashion or armor and weapons and all that sort of thing. So yeah, you can build your own library. You can use Pinterest. I also sometimes collect just specific references and throw them on a PureF board. But here I just have just a whole bunch of information open, and whatever catches my eye, I'm gonna sort of draw from reference, just the main shapes. So I don't want to copy the design exactly. I'm just looking for like the main silhouette, and the basic shapes that these garments make on the different references as a starting point. So what I'm gonna do is drop this down to maybe 15% opacity, something that's low enough that I can see the silhouette, but it isn't distracting at all. And the important thing here is when you're drawing clothing from reference, it's not to copy the shape exactly of the reference, but to really understand how it falls on the body, on the shapes of the body. So your structure underneath, if I were to draw like a center line, for example, the center line is not in the perfect center of the shape, right? I'm not going like right through the middle. I'm trying to follow the form of the anatomy. And if I draw some contour lines, almost like following the geometry of the figure, right? Almost like a doll. So all these, the anatomy of this figure, it has a three-dimensional volume to it, and it's really important to follow these sort of contour lines when you're placing garments on the figure to make it make sense. Because, for example, if I draw a belt, right, the belt needs to follow the contour line of the hips. Something like that, right? To show that it's actually wrapping around the body. Because sometimes I see, actually very often I'll see a belt or something that just goes straight across like that, which is just completely ignoring the shape of the body that's underneath it. And not only does it look a little bizarre, but it makes it extremely difficult to interpret by a three-dimensional, like a 3D artist. So remember, this is all in the context of video games, or video game or VFX productions. Characters are designed for the entertainment industry. So there's next steps down the process, where artists need to model it and rig it and animate it. So it needs to make sense three-dimensionally when you're drawing it. So as I'm laying out some garments, I'm going to think about these contours. I'm also going to think about the sort of rhythms of the body. So you have some main gestural lines happening, like the center line. This center line here that I was drawing is a sort of main gesture line. Another really common one is this the sort of split in the legs that happens. I suck with the names of muscles, but I think this is the. Oh, I don't want it. Let me look it up. It starts with an S, and I have it on the tip of my tongue. The sartorius. Yeah. So the sartorius kind of chops the leg in half. You have your quads, you have your hams. But this is a really common gestural line to use in costume design, just because it kind of it wraps around the limb nicely. You also have this sort of line on the inside of the arm, kind of separating your flexors from your extensors. And all these lines I try to keep in mind a little bit, especially when I'm designing my own garments. But for now, I'm just going to look at some reference and start just placing them on the figure, seeing what happens, what I can make of them. So I'm kind of going to sketch these out fairly quickly. I'm just looking for the main shapes that they create, almost like geometric or the main silhouette shapes. If I get too much into detail right now, it's not gonna. I'll get too quickly attached to whatever I'm drawing. So I'm looking for the main sort of iconography, the main relationships of the garment. So if it ends higher up on the arm or lower on the arm, making sure not to chop things into equal parts, because that makes it very kind of stagnant. And really looking for the sort of particularities of a certain garment and what kind of differentiates it from others. Is it the cut of the neckline? Is it really high up or is it further down? How does stuff drape? Is it a very rigid clothing? For instance, this textile that I'm looking at feels a little thicker than a t-shirt, like a thin cotton. So it'll hold its shape much better and be much more structural than something like a t-shirt. So I might look at the shirt of one reference, and now I'll pull another one up and maybe look at at the pants, or if it's a dress. Let me see. I don't know. Let's do something like this. And the best thing is not to find a reference that's like in the exact same pose. You should be able to use a reference from any angle and basically translate it onto your figure. You know, you kind of interpret the shapes on the reference image. You know, where does the garment lie, and how big are things and where are they placed in relationship to the body, and then you kind of translate it in space, and it makes for a really good exercise in sort of understanding space and perspective and stuff. But it's also just it's very valuable in actually designing stuff, because then you're not limited to the angle or the perspective of your reference. And for instance, like my reference here is walking toward the camera, and this garment is flowing all over the place, but I need to consider that my figure is standing, you know, pretty straight, and that there's a different sort of wave, or there's a different line of action. So I need to consider that when drawing any type of drapery. Will generally follow the motion of the body. So I kind of need to consider that. Trying to stay fairly gestural, which just means, you know, keeping your lines fluid. This character has these big pockets. I'm just sort of looking for the rhythms that creates, and not necessarily the exact design of them. Also, another thing to consider is that I haven't really decided on what kind of character I'm designing yet. I guess this is just could be some general fashion exploration, or some kind of skin exploration for a certain culture. But the nice thing is that I can, you know, do a lot of quick sketches like this and explore different things pretty quickly. And then if I like any individual part, for instance, I really like this shirt, I can kind of cut it out, sort of like that. Maybe just duplicate it, so I have it on its own layer, and I can, you know, match something else with it and do an iteration basically. So you can work quickly on doing a lot of different variations. You know, maybe this one has, instead of being cut, it's actually tucked in to like a big fabric belt or something. So here I'm considering the perspective of the torso. You're sort of looking at the underside of the ellipse here, but at the bottom, because the pelvis is tilted forward, you'll see the front side of that ellipse. So here it'll be fairly straight, and then you kind of get, you know, more angle as you go up. But whenever you're drawing something that's wrapping around the body, you need to make sure that you're following those ellipses. This has like a cool a little bit. Very graphic, sort of square dress that sort of wraps around the side, which is kind of cool. So it's tucked in, and you'll have some pinch folds coming out here. But I won't worry about those too much. Those are really internal details. I'm just worrying about the main shape that this creates. I like to base most of my designs in reality. I mean, some people don't think it's too fun to work that way, and I do like to exaggerate things for sure, especially in this shape design. But I think starting sort of grounded in something real can help develop your visual library for how things work in reality. And then you can always push. You can take this and exaggerate the flare of it, or if you really want to push the silhouette read. But for now, I'll keep it pretty generic. Maybe look at this being some sort of collar. Maybe this is long. Long sleeves, who knows? So I'm not getting into sort of any detail beyond just the shape, just the shapes. I'm not thinking about trim or too many like tertiary details or what would you call it, like accessories and stuff. Just looking at the main shape of every garment. Oh, I'll do another one. Cool sort of shoulder pad thing happening. And sometimes well, sometimes I definitely like looking for important landmark folds. Um, for instance, this one here at the elbow shows that there's compression happening because her arm is slightly bent, and those kinds of folds we generally like to include in video games because sometimes you can't simulate perfectly, like, well, cloth is already hard to simulate to begin with, but folding cloth, like it's pretty, like there's ways of simulating draping cloth, but folds like this where you have to use like blend maps and all this technical stuff, some companies are there, but a lot of companies aren't quite there yet where it actually looks good. Sometimes they have it, but it doesn't feel quite right. So you just like include it in the model. Figure out where this sleeve ends. Mix a different interior shirt. I mean, honestly, I'm not really here to reinvent. Like, I'm not really a fashion designer. I'm a character designer, and I use fashion as a tool. But in the same way, you don't reinvent a wheel every time you design a car. You don't have to reinvent fashion every time you design a character. There's like tons and tons of cool stuff, and just mixing and matching and pairing stuff is just the creative process. It's combining two things that most people wouldn't have combined or haven't tried, and you just see what happens. Sometimes it's a mess, sometimes it works out. I'm getting a very, very modern, like almost like a office look from this. I think it's the shoulder pads and the cut of this shirt. Oh well, maybe I'll just leave it. Also, cloth can be tricky to draw, especially all the folds and stuff, and I generally just try to get the main silhouette of it. Like these inside lines in here they kind of give an impression of movement in the cloth, but they're not really specifically like they're not describing anything really specific. It's kind of getting the main lay of these folds, getting the general topography down. here I mean my reference is the pants are kind of swooping out that way, but I do want to keep the sort of gesture of this leg, so I might flip that, something like that. I can feel like it's twisting the other way. Who knows? You can also explore. I like to explore hairstyles at this point too, because it does. We just have a bald character, but hair does add a lot to a character design. So I might sketch some out. Again, staying pretty fluid with these lines, just looking for the main gesture of things. We're starting to have a little something. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something. Maybe there could be some jewelry on his hand. And now I'm breaking away from my reference and just looking at like how can I resolve the internal shapes in an interesting way. And obviously there's also footwear. Deciding on what kind of shapes you want to include. So here there's puffy pants. Just for contrast, I might do like a very thin sandal or something. Something with some delicate straps and might scale these up. I tend to draw footwear often like really close to the feet, and it doesn't it actually doesn't translate to reality or to 3D very well, because all shoes have thickness. They don't conform to your skin. They're not like spandex. So yeah, so you'd want to model them with thickness, and then but if your concept is right around the shoe, like if there's no space between, I bring my this up here. I mean, see, I'm completely off because I wasn't looking. But if you you don't have any space basically between the foot and the shoe, then it just doesn't make sense. Also, I did kind of oversimplify these feet when I initially sketched them, so I'm not going to think about that too hard. Bring that all the way down. Yeah, because my main priority is just making these shapes look cool to begin with. I want them pointy. Pointy. So generally, like, toes scrunch up into pointy shoes like this anyways. Okay, let's do another version. Like this one, I really like the simplicity of it. Just coming back to it. And it's kind of nice to have them on separate layers, because when I bring them back, I see new ideas and new ways of expanding on this. Maybe I could add like a secondary collar or something that if I want to go more into fantasy land with this. So again, really thinking about the three-dimensional forms. How does this follow the shape? What kind of rhythms does whatever piece you add create? Can you have something complementary to the shape? Is it a really simple shape? And in that case, can you add something that like complex and detailed beside it to bring to bring focus to that area? So like I like this leading movement up to the head. So maybe I want to create something that keeps the attention around the head. So maybe there's like I don't know, what can I find? What can I find in this mess of references? I was thinking maybe some earring or ornament or something. Or like an updo, like something very meticulously made with braids and all sorts of knots and stuff. Really hard to undo, take apart. I'm not really attached to any like idea that I put down. You know, if something needs to change to work better, then just erase it and redraw it. And if you're really uncertain, then you kind of create another layer and deal with it non-destructively. But so I don't like breaking that up. I like the simplicity of it, how it was before. Okay, let's leave that there for now. Got all sorts of weird stuff that has nothing to do with one another. I like these pockets. And now I'm seeing, like, can I take a motif, like crisscrossing straps? Can I take a motif and make it part, like a repeating part of the design or the garment style in a different way? Maybe it becomes like part of the collar, or maybe it becomes the shoes or something. Let's see if we can give this one a hairstyle too. There's placeholder. Just paying attention to the silhouette that I'm creating. Maybe it brings attention to a piece of jewelry, or like maybe this will be hidden, like this earring on this side will be kind of hidden amongst a lot of detail, but this one will stand out in the silhouette. Oh, you might know that I'm constantly flipping my canvas, and sorry if that's annoying, but it's just how I check shapes and stuff. Here giving a sort of impression of secondary detail. Okay, maybe we do another one. I'll just do one more. We'll do one more and then we'll talk about how to sort of prepare the prepare for the next step, which is the sort of detailing, where we go into more of the specifics and really resolving the garment, because you know it's all nice to have shapes and stuff, but if you can't resolve it, like, you know, where everything is really clear in the design, where the seams are, where the, like, how many pieces it can be cut up into, how it's actually made, like those things need to be clarified sometime in the next step, or else you're not doing your job as a designer to kind of like design something functional. In that case, you're just making a pretty picture, which is also important sometimes. So again, getting the main structure of these folds, because it's kind of important in this case. Here, maybe this maybe this continues down sort of like that. And then going off the rails. It's like you start on the rails and then you go off and do your own thing. But like this design was just from a shirt, and now I'm sort of extrapolating that motif into another part of the clothing, making it sort of one continuous thematic. And then maybe there's some asymmetry here. And these are curtain folds, which are always fun to do, where basically you're just doing a squiggle and then sort of linking all the parts that overlap, like this. And then when you see it from below, they kind of drape like this. So you're just kind of following the curve, depending from which angle you see it, of course. Just kind of looking for variety, not trying to repeat myself too much. Like do very rhythmical lines, like equally spaced and stuff. It becomes very boring. I want to follow this this gesture. Well, maybe not. Maybe I do want it to flare out. Horizontal. Yeah, I think that's gonna be better. And who knows, what can I put? Like a bandeau or something. Yeah, so now I'm just kind of messing around with shapes and stuff. But this is, yeah, this is the most important part, or I guess, no, I shouldn't say that. It's not the most important part. It's all important, but it is I guess most important part in the actual design exploration is figuring out something that, you know, reads, figuring out the first read of the silhouette, making sure that works, and that's interesting. For a hairstyle in this case. I'm almost picking my reference randomly. And that's just I guess a habit, is that I like to work fast enough that happy accidents can happen. And if I spend too much time choosing which reference I'm gonna use, like being super planning everything out from the get-go, then sometimes I don't stumble upon a really cool combination or something unexpected. And it's the same reason I sketch quite quickly too, is so that you know, I just let the lines flow, let the lines flow and let the shapes emerge. There's a chonky bracelet. Chonky bracelets react to gravity, so they need to fall until they can't move. Alright, so I'm just going to block that there. Oh, actually that's completely the wrong angle. Flip that ellipse, because the hand is actually facing towards us. This hand's going to be in front. I'm just going to erase that out. Chunky bracelets on this side. No chunky bracelet. Anyways, so okay, so we have a couple, I guess you could call them just blockouts of costumes, and now let's go into sort of breaking away from reference a little bit and seeing how we can spice these up, add a little bit of storytelling, while still being in the blocking stage. So not concentrating on detail, which is, you know, a more in-depth way of storytelling, you know, with patterns and trinkets and accessories and all that stuff. But we're gonna look at these a little bit more in depth. Okay, so so now I'm looking at this shape and asking myself, like, what's interesting and what's not really interesting. So I feel like I like the motif of the crisscrossing bands. Maybe I could use that in a pattern. So I'm just gonna write this on the side. I'm gonna scribble them on the side. This isn't quite writing, but I don't really like the disco flowy pants. But maybe we can make them more interesting somehow. Like maybe we use bands that are kind of like coming off of them, like belts, but are also part of the pant, like a second layer to the pant. And for something like that, like repetition legitimizes. So we're gonna put a couple of them. It's just a way of like breaking up the silhouette, making it more interesting, a little bit more fantasy-like. Maybe there's some back here. Makes the pants a gives the pants a statement. They're supposed to be doing something. So now this is very much a motif. These sort of thick belt things. And I'm thinking a little bit about negative space when I'm adding these, you know, large this kind of shape and this shape here and this down here, kind of making these interesting and not repeating in size or in shape. And maybe, who knows, maybe maybe you have a couple small bands coming around. Yeah, I mean, this is why belts and buckles and bags are so popular on concepts, is because they add something interesting to the silhouette. You know, like pouches and belts everywhere, always. It's a recipe that works. Just fixing that shape. Okay, so already this is a much more interesting design than what it was with just the pants. I don't need these notes, I don't think. Okay, this one, I don't like the hair. I don't need the hair. It's giving me too like royalty, like European royalty, which is not what I'm looking for. I don't think it's what I'm looking for. Maybe just go with something simple. It's like tucked into the back. Layer to the shoulder pad, because why not? We're in fantasy world now. Maybe a little something happening there, a little bit of detail. Maybe this there's like 2 layers to this belt, and the top layer has like more detail, like a really intricate pattern or something, like a lace thing or something. Maybe I can bring back this layering something like I don't know, it works. I am still thinking a little bit about functionality when drawing in these shapes, like And maybe there's this layered plating happening above the dress. Being careful not to be too messy, like to erase things completely if I decide to erase them. And then maybe in the back we have some sort of like one of those big bows like you see on, is it, I don't know, some like armors in, I think in Japanese culture, like in ancient Japan. It was on certain garments they had the big belts with the big bows. But I don't know the specifics. It is big bows, has a big flailing part of the bottom kind of happening. I like that shape. It's gonna go like that, drape, and then yeah, like that. There you go. Here we have a split. Maybe something to split up the garment into like multiple pieces of fabric. Maybe there's a seam down here, but they split higher up. It's like a thick armor garment. I don't know. Maybe we're inventing stories now. So we're sort of in the phase where we're still blocking out the costume, but now we're thinking a little bit about functionality and what we're gonna plan to do down the line. So maybe for this under this on the underside of this robe, which might go to the back. Maybe it's almost like a chainmail or something. But it might be like a I always like these high collars. I find it frames the head so nicely. Collar, and then maybe you have something delicate in there. And then simple chest piece. Okay, let's address this one. So I like the pants. I don't like the shirt. Also, it'd be so hard to actually have it two draping things one on top of the other. Maybe we go with like asymmetry for this one, like having something come across like that. This is a very modern cut to the shirt. So maybe we can change that a little bit. Let's make it a little more interesting. It might just be this color. Give me pirate vibes now. That's something to consider when doing costume design, is if something looks like something else that you've seen already, like a character from a movie or another design, don't necessarily shy away from it or tell yourself like, oh, you can't do that, but it's better to actually analyze it and see like, okay, why does it remind you of that character? Is it the shapes? Is it the cut of the clothing? Is it the pose, or is it just an overall feeling? For myself, like, I'm kind of getting pirate look from this, and I think that's because of it's a combination of the bandeau, or this bandana on her hair, and the sort of like the flyaways, like the sort of messy hairstyle underneath, with this piece of fabric, coming out back. This is kind of a piratey hairstyle. Especially if there was like jewelry and stuff, then it would just be like straight up Jack Sparrow. But then also the combination of that with the sort of flowy, or the sort of puffy shirt. For example, like if I just hid this, if I just put this on another layer for now, and were to do like some flowy shirt like that, you can see it instantly turns into a pirate. And that's just from like that sort of Victorian era the garment style, the vest. You pull out all the cliches, put a big gun, like a big is it a blender bust? But there you have it. Don't have enough Control-Z's to go all the way back. There's no worries, because I only spent 5 seconds doing that. So maybe if I don't want to go in the pirate direction, I could change one of those ingredients you know, maybe change the vest, or maybe add something else to the silhouette that will bring it in another direction. But I kind of like the pirate thing. Like maybe I can play it up. Sometimes it's really it's a good way of creating personas for your character, or to do not necessarily creating personas. What I want to say is like the storytelling can happen sort of subconsciously by the shapes that you use. For example, like this shape language kind of reminds me of a pirate, but this character might be not at all a pirate. They might just be like a merchant or something. But the fact that they have the shape language of a pirate kind of might tell you that, like, okay, maybe this merchant is a little bit sketchy, and maybe they're just there for your gold, you know. So you're kind of using the shape language of something else to tell the story of your character. In the same way, you can use like the shape language of different animals, for example, to give a personality to your characters. Like, you know, if you want your character to look slow and dopey, you sort of give them floppy ears and a big belly like an elephant. Or you know, the lion is like the used so often as being like, you know, he's ferocious and courageous and all this stuff. So you might put a lion's mane on a character or something, but or just a straight up lion head like Hercules. But you even just having like, you know, broad shoulders and more of like a mane, like I guess almost like Inuyasha's design, where, you know, you have this and then maybe you have claws and stuff, or you know, a more built silhouette. You can start to give this sort of story that the character is fierce and ferocious and courageous without literally, you know, making them a lion. So I'm just indicating some internal details here to bring more focus to the top, so that there's a higher density of detail here, and then at the bottom it's just flowy and whatever. It's much more free. I have gotten a little bit into indicating accessories, but I'm not going to go into accessories too much with these. Careful with tangents. That line was following the exact line of the arm, which I didn't want. So this is in the back. I kind of like that flaring shape, almost like a petal. trying to think of what kind of character this one would be. Rebellious princess. The giant two-handed sword. Okay, so I'm kind of running a blank for this character. I'm like, what do I want? So I'm gonna sort of go back to my mess of a Pinterest and look for some more inspo. Just some more shapes. Not necessarily, and it could come from literally anything. Like I'm looking at not just fashion, but the accessories, the boots, the jewelry. Anything that can maybe break up the how generic this is kind of looking. Maybe there's some. Pirate and this thing and this thing. Okay, so this is pretty much, you know, setting the stage to kind of do a second pass of detailing and adding accessories and things. But now I'm going to talk about a step which I think is really important, especially in presenting your sketches, and that's having a clean silhouette. I did talk about this in the last video of poses to really like close your silhouette and make sure that it's pretty clean, even if the internal lines and stuff are a little bit messy and can be a little bit scribbly and not describe anything super precisely, but you do want your silhouette to be as accurate as possible, because that's really where the first read happens, and where people will decide whether they like your design or not, like instantly, is making sure you design an interesting silhouette. So what I like to do, I have my character on another the base body in another group here. And for each of these sketches, I've been actually using this method where I kind of fill the silhouette and have there's a stroke on the layer. So I set up an action here. I think it's called there's render layers, but here, contour line. So if I throw this action on, this action is super easy to set up. It's just these two things. But basically, here, I'll just use a pencil tool just to show you. So this is what it's doing. It's making this line around it. You can see when I turn it on and off. So what it is it's an inner glow, but um, it's an inner glow and an outer glow instead of just being a stroke, because a stroke will doesn't have anti-aliasing, and if you're using something like a pencil tool, it'll look super crunchy. If that's your thing, that's your thing. If you want your drawing to look like it was made in the 90s, or like on like Photoshop 1. But yeah, so the outer glow or inner and outer glow, I'm setting them to normal. You can sort of see the settings here. This is kind of dependent on the size of your canvas. You know, if you want a bigger or smaller one, but I set it to these, and there's the inner one and the outer one. So if you take that outer one off, you can see it's really, really crispy because I'm using the pencil, but having that outer one kind of softens that edge. And what I like doing with the sort of pencil, with the pencil tool, which has no anti-aliasing on it, so I can draw a shape and then fill it if it's set to contiguous. And it'll just fill my silhouette and keep a line. And no matter if I erase it with a pencil eraser, no matter how I refine the silhouette, it'll always keep that stroke on it. And that I don't know. I like the aesthetic of it. It saves me from redrawing the silhouette all the time. So what I do is I kind of set a layer up underneath the sketch layer, and then let me just drop this again. And I'm not just gonna like wand select around and bucket fill, because that doesn't really give me any control over the actual silhouette I'm creating. So I'm actually gonna go and basically trace my silhouette to have exactly what I want, and I will change it depending on what depending on how I want to basically fix my sketch. So for now, I'm just gonna sort of trace over my sketch, and it can be pretty rough, but I am designing the silhouette. You know, I'm designing the lines that I'm using, whether it's a straight edge or whether it's curved or whether it's like has a slight bend in it where the corners are, all those things. I'm designing the silhouette as a graphic, as like a graphic design. So here, for instance, I'm going to separate out just like one strand of hair. Sure there's a little bit of negative space there. So see here I kind of cut in to follow the form of the body a little bit better. And here see at the end I just kind of bucket fill stuff to actually close the silhouette. But for now, I'm looking at this there. The other thing I can do is also use the lasso tool with no anti-aliasing to also go around, and if you press Option or hold Alt, you can when you lift your stylus, it'll create a straight edge, so then it becomes geometric lasso tool. And then when you press down and draw normally, it's just normal. So I like to use the lasso tool that way. Gives me more control. but in that case I can just fill it like that. So it really depends how you want to do it. There's a thousand ways of going about this. I could also shift click to fill, or to make like a straight lines like that. Or you can just learn to freehand straight lines, or relatively straight lines. And this really just becomes magical once you fill it at the end. Get a nice clean silhouette. And just as a side note, I also think like a nice graphic silhouette is also important in realism. Like if you're working on a really realistic game or IP or whatever. But graphic doesn't mean geometric. It just means that the information of the silhouette is exaggerated slightly in a way that that is instantly legible. Like you can immediately understand what the silhouette is trying to communicate, if that makes sense. So, for instance, when I'm looking at the belt, I'll put a little hitch in the silhouette, like that, a little corner, to show that the belt has thickness and that it's overlapping the garment. And that's a graphic element. You know, it's this. It's not the fact that it's like square. It's just the fact that there's that little corner edge, that the overlap in the silhouette, which I mean is my definition of what like the graphic meaning of something is, graphical interpretation. But yeah, it just makes things legible. For instance, this fold here is just a graphic marker to anybody modeling this, that there's a fold, that compression is happening and it's pushing the cloth out to the side like that. So yeah, so I think that it's important to design your silhouette even when you're doing realistic stuff in a way that that reads really quick and can be easily interpreted. Okay, that's there. So yeah. So I'm just gonna fill these holes. Sometimes there's little artifacts created. There, and there. Okay, so now I have basically not only a clean silhouette, but I have a clean mask to work on. So what I do is then I snap my sketch. I use a clipping mask, which you can do either by so if I click on this layer, you can right click, create clipping mask, or you can use Windows Control-Alt-G, and that'll create a clipping mask. I guess I should maybe set up my keys, like display keys for these kinds of videos. That would probably be useful, because I use shortcuts constantly. So yeah, and now I can, I'm actually gonna drop my sketch opacity down so I can really analyze my silhouette and see, you know, and tweak things. So for instance, I could add a little bump here to show that maybe there's a little stitching happening at the bottom of that belt. Same here. There's a little bit of weight attached to the bottom. Maybe there's a little bit of a breakup. No, I don't like that. That's a little better. It gives kind of a raver pant look to it. I'm just like experimenting with adding different shapes to the silhouette and seeing what could be interesting. You know, even if it's something like, you know, like that. Like what does this add to the design? Is it purely illustrative, like, or is it actually functional? In this case, I think it's just purely illustrative. It just adds a cool flair to something. But we're finding how thick are these straps? Are they going all the way? Around. Cool. Okay, so I think we're getting somewhere. Now if I bring back my. Oh right, she doesn't have shoes. Kind of shoes. You can also design in silhouette. Which can be fun sometimes. Oh. This foot has a weirdly long toe. So I'm going to fix that. So it doesn't impede on the actual design as much. I want this to kind of feel like a sandal. That's, I don't know, maybe only on the oh, did I not close something? Do 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 do. Look at the foot. Maybe they're like flats. Just up on your toes. Okay. That's a little something. Very raver with bracelets all up the arm. What I'm gonna do is erase out where this thumb and finger is. Oh right, I did change this hand, so I need to fill that. There. And yeah, so that's basically, like, at this point, you could either on your sketch layer, or if you're not confident just drawing straight over your sketch layer, you could also create another layer and also clip to it and start doing basically your final design. And it keeps you within the boundaries of your silhouette, but you're not restricted to it. Like if you want to change your silhouette, let's say you wanted to create like, so if you want to explore more stuff, right? Like more elements that might break the silhouette, you just unclip your sketch layer. And let's say you wanted like these big disc shaped things on her arm, like this, right? So, you know, I would sketch out their placement, you know, maybe there's an attachment point or something. And then you go back to your silhouette, go back to your pencil, and then you just add it. You kind of like go and fill it. Then you can clip your sketch back on, refine it. And now you have disc shoulders. Clip this back. So yeah, this is a good way of setting up for further exploration, and it's really good for presentation because, as you can see, like this is pretty night and day. Like there's nothing about the silhouette that can be misinterpreted. Like there's no fuzzy edges, there's no broken lines, things line up, and that's the most important thing. So you can imagine if I did this for all four of these characters, right? It's much clearer than just this sketch, because this sketch, for instance, there's broken lines here. You know, there's junctions and stuff that aren't clear. These kind of create tangents with the body that's underneath, and it's a little bit confusing. But once you get a clean silhouette, it's clean read, and that helps move everything forward in the pipeline. So I'll keep these shoulder pads, I guess, discs, wings. Why not? Add a little something. You can most often than not, you can make almost anything work. I mean, depending on what story you want to tell, but design wise, like a good designer can make almost any absurd idea work aesthetically. It's just about using the right shapes and placing them in the right area to create like dynamic relationships between shapes and not really boring ones. But like if you wanted to throw a cape on her, like you can make it work. No, like no matter what, you could give her a funky hat, or you could, just almost anything in costume design goes, as long as you know how to apply it with shape design. Okay, I think that's gonna be it for this video. It was a little bit of a shorter one, but in the next video we're gonna talk about detailing one of these characters. So I think I might do that tonight. At least this third part here, the detailing. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for hanging around, and thanks for being patient, patiently waiting for these next parts to come out. So yeah, see you in the next video. Ciao.